ladies and gentlemen, my name is Total Biscuit of the WoW Podcast, Blue Please on CynicalBrit.com. Welcome to Grim Batol. This is a long video. It would have been even longer if I hadn't done what I usually do to instances, which is edit them down to 200% speed, as well as take out corpse running and things like that. So first things first, Grim Batol can be found in the wetlands, as you might imagine. It is a level 85-ish instance. I'm going in here with an 83 mage, and I also have backing me up 2 level 85 hunters, tanking a level 85 death knight, and a level 85 priest as the healer. Unlike the Vortex Pinnacle, I am able to just simply walk in here. The dungeon entrance is not broken, so I'm not going to be thrown back to Dalaran if we wipe, although, actually, considering the corpse run on this one, I kinda wish that I was. It would have been a little bit quicker. Whatever the case, we'll get things sorted out, no doubt. Now, this is an honest video, as in I've not edited out any of our wipes, and there are quite a few of them. This is not an easy instance, and you will see why as we go through. Editing has been applied for the sake of saving time only. All the wipes and stuff, as I say, are still there, and as to how long we spent in here, try over 2 hours. Admittedly, that did involve a lot of downtime, but whatever. So we open up right here with some very simple AoE packs. They are not threatening in any way, shape, or form, although we will see them around the place as we go in. These are by far the easiest things you will see in here, and everything else is very, very unpleasant indeed. Anyone who got the impression from that first pull that this was going to be an AoE instance is going to either be sorely disappointed or very, very shocked, possibly both. Now we have an extremely good group here for crowd control. I've got myself, obviously, as a mage. I'll be able to deal with any humanoids. And we also have 2 hunters that will be able to use those freezing traps as well as slow and kite and that kind of thing. Now it eases you in here, nice and easy, with a pack of these 3 Drake-like creatures. They have a number of different abilities, one of which is a channeled fire debuff that you can see there that actually stacks a large amount of stuff there. It's called Burning Corruption, and if it keeps stacking, it will make you very, very vulnerable indeed to fire. And also, we do have loot drops here, like that one right there. That's an 84 green, item level 312. There's a lot of blue trash drops, and the loot is in this instance. It is much more complete than Vortex Pinnacle, and we'll get to see some very nice items indeed. Now, we start going into something that's a little bit more challenging, using as much crowd control here as humanly possible, dealing with the Arms Master. These things have a flurry of blows, which does a massive amount of damage to the tank. We've got these guys who can also cast water bolts, and they do so quite frequently. They also summon water elementals, which are not particularly pleasant either. And we've got the Earth Shaper, which I managed to sheep at the back there. They summon an Earth Elemental, as you might imagine. And they also have a nasty Area of Effect Earthquake attack, which is not nice at all. They also have that Stone Skin debuff, which is well worth either purging or stealing, because it reduces incoming magic damage by 50%. Now, there is a neat gimmick here whereby we have to try and save some of the red dragons. And if we do that, we get 1 chance to fly over the instance doing a bombing run to clear out some of the trash packs. And as you can see here, that's a good thing. Because yes, these basic packs can and will murder you. Horribly. Bear in mind that our tank is a level 85, our healer is a level 85, and neither of them are particularly slouching on gear. The only level 83 we've got is me, and I'm still capable of putting out good damage in here anyway since we're just against yellow mobs. But yes, we just got murdered by the 3rd or 4th pack in. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Now, the reason I'm keeping this little bit of the corpse run is to show you just how painful it currently is. This is going to be changed, but the problem is that you actually move into the Twilight Highlands on your way back there, which enables the Griffin. Like that. And this is how slow the Griffin goes. Bear in mind, this is a 2 times speed. This moves slower than walking. Yeah. It's horrendous. That is a bug that does need to be fixed. It's also the same in Deepholm. It's not good. Anyway, wipe number 1 of several. Now, this is an ongoing battle between the Red Dragonflight and the Twilight, and the whole rationale behind this is that they have stolen some of Alexstrasza's eggs, and they are doing mean and unpleasant things, and I don't just mean making an omelette. Now, we do have a seagull, so we should be okay. And what we can do here is that if we clear out the trash packs, we can rescue these red drakes, and we will be able to fly on them for a one-time bombing run of the trash in this instance. We can clear out a large amount of it, but only if we don't suck. Therein lies the rub. You'll get to see the mechanic in question fairly soon, and it is a very neat gimmick indeed. What it does is it allows you to save a lot of time if you are coordinated, if you know what you're doing, and if you've had practice at it. Since once you've done it, you can't do it again the entire instance run. So, what happens? Well, we've got 5 drakes, we can mount each one of them. What we're actually doing here is we're coordinating on Ventrilo as to an order, and I'm actually calling out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for mounting. And the reason for that is that you don't want to all mount simultaneously. If you do, you all fly in this big group, and it's more difficult to pick off the stragglers. You'll end up maybe attacking the wrong groups. You have to kill the pack entirely. Otherwise, the pack will just go back to full health, and it'll be a complete waste of time. So you see there, we got on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We coordinate to make sure that we went in order. And now we're going through with this bombing run. Here's the thing, though. There's a lot of trash packs, and you can't kill all of them. You have to focus. You absolutely have to focus. If you don't, and if you start doing damage to multiple packs and you're not able to actually kill them, then this was an entire waste of time for you. This is why this is so cool a mechanic. If you are experienced, and if you are coordinated, and if you're in a good group, you will be able to save time by killing a bunch of these packs. But as you can see, we didn't manage to kill them. We managed to maybe kill 1 or 2 mobs here and there, but otherwise, we didn't do a good job of this at all. So we're going to have to clear all of this trash, and that takes a long time. As an additional punishment for sucking, the beta currently has a little bit of a bug in it. So, it turns out that when we land, we aggro everything we just shot at. Which means, if you look over the other side of that bridge... Oh look, we've just pulled half the instance. Yeah. So you have to leg it out the door before they actually come and kill you. I thought, I'm going to be a smarmy boss, then we just watch them all running past there in a comedic fashion. Oh look, they detected me in AoE and now I'm dead. Wonderful. Splat. Thankfully, pretty much everyone else managed to get out of there, but oh, yeah, it's brutal. We like to call this the brutal difficulty level, ladies and gents, because that's exactly what it is. Time to start clearing some trash, and this is even more difficult. You'll see that we've got those dragonkin over there, and we also have some nasty Twilight. Now, this is probably one of the easiest mobs in here. The Twilight Enforcer is not particularly dangerous in any way, shape, or form. We just saw a little bit of style there from the Death Knight, trying to redeem himself after falling off the cliff in the Vortex Pinnacle, as you recall. Now, those ogres do so little, it's not even funny. They're one of the sort of freebie mobs, I like to call them. They're a bit of a lame duck. They're quite funny as well. So if we show you exactly what they do, we'll break him out of his sheep. And he does a spin, a meat cleaver, and then he gets dizzy and can't do anything. You can very easily move away from this, and we have seen it trigger while no one is near him, so they are really not very good at all. These, on the other hand, yeah. Now, these packs are full of pain in every way, shape, or form, and just to make matters worse, we've also got some very unpleasant patrols that we've got to be very careful with, and very easily pull aggro here if we aren't paying attention. Thankfully, I managed to grab that without too much of a problem and bring it down. He's also got a nasty buff called Arcane Infusion. As far as I can tell, you can't steal it. It doesn't appear to be magic, and it imbues his attacks with arcane damage, so he can hit you pretty hard. Now, these guys. Look at the size of that pack. Yes, it is actually that big. You are counting 5, possibly 6 in there by the looks of it. So we're going to just try as much crowd control as humanly possible. We're sitting here talking on Vent about the best way to deal with this. We're going to drop down 2 of the freezing traps. We're going to sheep something. And what you'll notice back in there, there's a couple of humanoids. We can deal with that. A lot of these Ascended guys, by the way, actually count as elementals. So you're going to want a Shaman or a Warlock in there if you can. Let's manage to freeze one, deal with that. And then we can smack up the Earth Elemental and the Water Spirit there. Those aren't too dangerous, but they are very nasty if grouped with others. Now, they also do a hit for about 15,000 damage as well. And that's not good at all. And what we've also got is that Ascended is absolutely going headfirst into the group. He's already murdered the priest and is slaughtering the rest of us. It's pretty brutal, let's be honest, and it looks like we are the hell out of there. You've got to be careful on your crowd control. Bear in mind that Ascended Flame Seeker guy also has a channeled stun, and no, I do not believe you can actually blink out of that. I did try. Yeah, that is a pack and a half. That's what I call a pack. This is a normal mode. This is a normal mode, level 85 instance in Cataclysm. And these packs are almost raid level difficulty, which is fantastic, I might add. This is going to take practice for people. I remember back in the days of vanilla, there were packs that were considered to be very challenging, and some of the stuff in UBRS was quite tough. Some of the stuff in LBRS was quite tough as well. Stratum, Scholarmance, all of these had nasty packs, and you were still expected to learn them. There was no hand-holding there. The thing is, that's part of what preparing to raid is all about, doing 5-mans that are actually challenging. Walkovers aren't any fun. You don't get anything out of that, and you certainly don't get any better. Therein lies the problem. Now, this stuff is pretty damn difficult, honestly, for a normal mode, and I'm happy with that. I really am. Like I say, there were days when there used to be normal mode instances, before indeed the concept of normal and hard even existed, that were of this level of difficulty. Now, some people are going to say, well, this is going to be a problem for Pugs. You guys are an organized group, and most of you are raiders on live, so you're aware of how to deal with this kind of thing. And yeah, but you need to be aware of how to deal with it as well. I suppose some people are going to complain and say, oh, well, I Pug, and this is going to suck because we're going to wipe all the time. Yeah, but if you keep practicing, you'll learn it. That's the point. Why should you be able to waltz into an instance and kill it first time? I don't see the point in that, because then every time after that just gets progressively more boring. You'll learn nothing that way. Now, we've got these packs locked down a little bit better, and you'll also notice that right there, that aura, that's a power word barrier, which is it's like kind of like an anti-magic shell, but it absorbs damage for anyone that's inside it, so it's an area of effect barrier. It's not just a mass buff like a lot of people thought it would be. It's like, oh, well, you cast that and it buffs your entire group with power word shield. No, it doesn't. It's actually on the ground, and you have to physically move into it for it to be of any use to you whatsoever. Okay, next group. These are one of the easier packs, like we've seen before. Enforcer, which is not too much of a threat right there. Guardian and a Seer as well. 2 Guardians, in fact. Nice crowd control there. It does help to have this level of CC available in your group, and not every group is going to have it. That doesn't mean it's impossible by any stretch of the imagination. I think we're actually overkilling it in terms of the amount of crowd control we are using here. That said, on these packs, as long as you've at least got one form of crowd control, I think you're going to be alright. Fighting them all without crowd control, as we saw earlier when the crowd control broke and we lost control of the group, is extremely painful. And honestly, you're going to run into a few problems there, but I'm just trying to think of a setup you'd have which wouldn't have at least some form of crowd control. You're going to have something, surely. Especially when you've got stuff like a lot of elementals in here, so even a warlock can do something that doesn't involve fearing things all over the place and aggroing another group. Now, we've just got a green of the Storm Blast, which is a new item combo, and I can show you that momentarily. There you go, it's got hit, crit, and agi on it, as well as some stamina. Very nice indeed. This bridge, on the other hand, that is not nice at all. This is lethal. I mean, look at that patrol. It's goddamn huge. It's like the pack that we encountered previously, and there are even harder packs. Now, we've got to be careful here, because it is a pat, and we've got a nasty group in the corner there, and a nasty group off to the right. We've got to be extremely cautious with how we pull this. So we're going to use 2 traps, and of course, we will also use a sheep there on the Arms Master, because that's a big form of damage that could be inflicted on our tank there. I'm getting my ass kicked already, so I need to get the hell out of there. Nice little bit of power word barrier. I'm backing off very slowly, and I think you guys might be able to guess what happens here. I use Mirror Image, which pulls the group, and we wipe. That would be wipe number 3 now. Bear in mind, we haven't even got to the first boss yet. This is not easy. Good. It's our first time in this instance, and we do, let's be honest, deserve to wipe. This is all a learning process. Just as you don't go into raids and expect to beat them on your first attempt, you should not be going into 5-mans and expecting to beat them on your first attempt. You have to work at it. You have to learn and realize what's actually going on here. And, of course, I was not able to get away with invisibility either. Oh, well. Now, we're coming up on the first boss at the moment, and we're just going to pull the last couple of packs before that happens. Shadow Weavers there. They're a new one, and as you might imagine, they cast a lot of shadow damage. You'll no doubt see their abilities later on in the dungeon. Smack the Drakenkin down there. Those are those 2-headed Ogre Magi. They cast a lot of Shadow Bolts. That seems to be all they really do at the moment. I'm sure they have another ability, but we didn't get to see it there. Ah, poor Dizzy Ogre. Bye-bye. I'll deal with that Elemental pack there in the corner, and I can tell you a little bit about this dude. Now, this guy, supposedly, his main ability is that he applies a massive bleed to the tank. And that bleed's supposed to do about 10k per tick. It doesn't. It does 30k per tick. The buff says 10. Actually, the buff says 5, I believe. It's supposed to do 10, and it actually does 30. Now, that makes the fight a little bit hectic, needless to say. It is doable, as you will see, but it is tricky. He also has a nasty charge ability that will toss you up in the air and do hideous amounts of AoE damage. And you're going to see that very soon indeed. It's a tough one, and I'm hoping Blizzard just leaves it as it is, honestly. I mean, we're using blue level questing gear with some dungeon stuff. The healer is able to just about keep up with the boss, so I don't see any need to tune it down from doing 30k per tick. I mean, why not? We're not wearing any special gear that your average casual player couldn't get a hold of. This is just questing and 5-man stuff. It's not even heroic. So yeah, just leave it. Make it nice and challenging. Make it a little bit hectic, because that is what it is right now. And you're about to see just exactly what I mean by that. Let's get mannered up and ready to go. Bear in mind just how quick it would have been if we'd actually managed to pull off that bombing run. Well, there you go. It rewards you for being experienced and being coordinated. Isn't that a good thing? I mean, that's a fantastic thing, surely. Surely that's what you want from a dungeon. Are we ready to go? Yes, we are. Now, the best thing you can do here is to spread out initially, so you can just hug the back wall there and you should be fine. Now, the bleed started being applied to the tank. You're going to see the tank's health drop like a rock right there. He's got a nasty conal ground pound effect as well. He also brings adds in, I might add. He pulls these little trogs, and those trogs do have quite a bit of health on them. Now, they will do a lot of damage to the main tank, and if you end up pulling aggro, they will beat the snot out of you as well. There we go. He's actually frenzied as he does at 25%, and this wrecks everything, doing so much damage it isn't even funny. We got torn apart there. So what I'll do is I'll show you the successful attempt, which was the next time we tried it. We tried to kite him, so desperately tried to kite him, but he knocked me in there and hit me for 40k. That ability there is Blitz, as you saw. It is a charge. It will then AoE knock everyone in the vicinity into the air and do a huge amount of damage. Oh, poor Seagull. It was before your time. Round 2, ladies and gents, let's try it once again. The healer is prepared for the obscene amount of damage that's coming in right here. We drop our AoE down. The problem is that the tank isn't quite able to grab aggro from everything, and these guys are not helping matters at all. You'll note that I'm using quite a bit of AoE here as well. There's the Blitz and the charge, nasty damage, able to deflect most of that with the ice block. Now, what I'd actually suggest to people right here, if you weren't doing this ridiculous damage race, is actually to focus fire down these trogs first. Just bring them down very quickly, instead of trying to AoE them, because the tank can't necessarily hold that area of effect aggro, as you can see. Murdered the tank once again, but thankfully we're able to kite it a little bit and bring it down. Yeah, I remember hectic fights like this. There's an awful lot of them, actually, in both Vanilla and TBC rating. A little bit of Wrath as well. It just comes down to the fact that you get to this point where it's doing so much damage that it's a desperate scramble to the finish. And what's wrong with that? Again, that sounds great to me. I don't see the problem with that at all. Now, what do we get? Very nice, isn't it? Modgood's Blade. It's a very nice, level 83. Most of the blues you will get in here are actually level 83. We didn't see any dungeon set stuff. I don't think you get the dungeon set in non-heroic. I'm pretty sure you must only get it in heroic, but then again, there's no real way to tell. This is an item level 333 caster weapon. We rolled off on that one, and I'm happy to have a hold of it. Although I do need to get myself an offhand. I think I do have a ICC 25 offhand knocking around somewhere. But hey, there you go. Right, that was the first boss. The other bosses, not quite as challenging, but very interesting nonetheless, and that's the important thing. And thus far, what I was saying on Vent at this time to all these guys is, isn't this awesome we're actually dying? Because we really didn't otherwise. You know, we might have had a dumb accident where we've, say, thrown ourselves off the side of an instance or pulled 5 packs at once, but in this we actually died to normal packs. It wasn't just from errors, it was the fact that these packs are actually quite tricky, and we need to learn them, we need to master them, and it does become easier as we go along, obviously. But for an 85 dungeon, I'd say this is extremely well balanced and very challenging, and it's got a bunch of really cool mechanics. This is a nice contrast to the Vortex Pinnacle, which really was all looks. It had a couple of packs that were kind of neat. It's like, hey, I've got to use CC on this. But aside from that, it wasn't the complete package, whereas this absolutely is. Ah, new pack. Here we go. These Twilight Beguilers are very unpleasant indeed. They can do a debuff called Chained Mind, which is a nasty stun. It's kind of like a force choke more so than anything else. You want to try and crowd control as much as possible, interrupt everything they possibly have, and they also cast a lot of those deceitful blasts very rapidly at seemingly random targets. So there's a lot of raid damage, at least group damage going on here. And you've got to deal with the Gron as well, which hits like an absolute goddamn truck. So we're going to have to bring him down very quickly. A lot of CC is very useful here, and of course, take advantage as a mage of the fact that you get that nice buff whenever you counterspell something and get yourself a little bit of extra damage that way. It's the way to do it. There you go. There's that force choke that you can see. It's a nasty stun. I do not believe you can blink out of that either. We'll find out later. I can't quite remember. I did do this last night, so we'll see, and I can always correct myself when we get there. Ah, Mage Water. Strudel. Terrible at this level. Absolutely abysmal, but we were actually very short on that Lava Stone Minestrone or whatever. Now, time for the second boss. This is Forge Master Thrungus. He's some kind of two-headed Gron/Ogre hybrid thing. It is a custom model. And this is like Mr. Smite Mach 2. So he will equip different weapons and he will get different buffs. He has something called Encumbered here. He's got a big mace and you don't want to be hit by it. This is a kiting phase. If he has the mace, you do not want to be hit because he does huge amounts of damage. Oh, and he can also impale you and smack you about a bit. So he'll jump around, he'll impale people at random, and he'll also chase the main tank. Now, you get him down to about 2/3 of his health. He'll equip double swords, dual blades. He can actually do a double attack, which has got a lot of burst damage. It's probably the least dangerous thing he can actually do. The mace is much more unpleasant. And when we go a little bit lower, I don't know if this is timed or whatever, he's switching again. He gets a shield, and this is a neat mechanic. He gets something called Personal Phalanx. If you attack him from the front, you do no damage, like 99% reduction or something like that. You've got to get to the side or get behind him in order to do anything. We did lose someone there. It's, well, someone, I say a pet, but hey, it's a nice boss. It's really neat. It's very creative. I like that. I can't wait to see what they do with it in heroic mode. I mean, it was entertaining in normal, so I would think that it's going to be even better. Okay, so dealt with that quite nicely. You'll notice we've actually got a bug here. He's able to use his Greater Heal over and over again for free because Inner Focus isn't disappearing. Gotta love it. That does clear off later on, unfortunately. Infinite spam of Greater Heal would be quite nice. Now, my understanding of priests in Cataclysm is quite limited. All I really know is that they wanted to completely change things around and make sure that you weren't using the same heal over and over again. So spamming Greater Heal doesn't appear to be the way to do things anymore. And I have to ask the priest that was there, and as I said in an announcement video, I think it was the I-40 announcement video if I remember correctly, I do want to have some class experts on video actually showing you the different mechanics and things like that. Obviously, it's pretty difficult to make sure I schedule all of that and get the filming done, etc., etc. But, yeah, I'm working on it, so try and educate people, hopefully. Now, it turns out you can blink out of the nasty mind force choke kind of thing, which is a good thing indeed, because it does nasty damage, and you know what? I hate hard disables. They're unpleasant. Another pack of these right here. It's still entertaining trash, that's the main thing. It does take quite a little bit of work. And you'll notice the architecture here is quite similar in places to a little bit lower Blackrock Spire in here, as well as the Blackrock Depths particularly. No big surprise there, honestly, although instead of the Dark Iron, this is actually all about the Twilight. Now, you might wonder about the Dark Iron, are they still around? What's been happening with them? Well, yes, they are. They've split off into two factions now. One loyal to Moira and the other to the Twilight. Those are sexy, sexy leggings. 333, look at that. Massive mastery. You also notice now mastery tells you what it affects. So in my case, it's flash burn, so it increases the amount of damage over time that I can do with fire spells. There we go, gave it to the priest, and thankfully there's another pair later on that I can wear. Blues seem to drop like candy in this area, which is very nice indeed, since most of them are actually level 83. So even if this is an 85 instance, you can still grab some stuff you can use here. It's good stuff. Only real problem I've got in this instance is the bosses are orange to me. Aside from that, it's perfectly doable with at least one level 83. I don't think you'd be able to do it with an 83 healer or tank, honestly. The stuff just hits too hard. You wouldn't be able to manage it. There is a reason why it's recommended for 85s, and in the Dungeon Finder, you also have to be 85 to access this area. Now, will you stop that? Bloody Sith. Now, we're coming up on one of my favourite packs in the area, and that's because I'm a mage and spell stealing is really neat. Now, these guys we'll see them around the corner in a second. They've got this buff which allows you to increase your casting speed and the amount of damage that you do. However, it adds 3 seconds of cooldown to everything. You see it right there. It's called Twisted Arcane. It's very cool indeed. So what you can do as a fire mage is you can steal this, and then you can rotate between Fireball and Pyroblast, which puts out an obscene amount of damage. And the buff lasts quite a while, and the mob also frequently rebuffs itself with this, so there we go. Also, we've got these Crimsonborn Warlords that are very heavy melee damage. They've got an empowering ability as well called Empowering Twilight. Not something you really want to be messing with. They can brutalize your group if you're not careful. Aside from that, not a huge amount of things to worry about. And our Seagull is in there, don't worry, we will be fine. Don't stand in the meat grinder though, oh god, do not stand in that. As dumb as it is and as easy it is to avoid, it is one of those mechanics that will wreck you if you're not careful, and that's good. It's an obvious mechanic should kill you. Without question. There we go, I've stolen it. Look at the amount of damage I'm able to put out of that, it's very silly indeed. What we've also got are these War Mages. War Mages are a little weird, I'm not entirely sure what they were going for with them. They don't really cast all that much. But they do have these elementally charged weapons that they dual wield, and they do quite a bit of damage with them. I think there's a bit of a frost shock and a fire thing there. Yeah, you know how it goes. Awful lot of elemental summoning going on right here. It really is the theme for this expansion, honestly. The Twilight are involved heavily with Ragnaros and things like that. They're all being used as pawns by the old gods, but they're a big fan of the elementals. We saw it in the Twilight Tour video. They had a huge amount of elementals lined up in the Twilight Highlands, a massive army of them. And this instance is absolutely no exception. Thankfully, for my poor unfortunate fire mage self, they've gotten rid of the immunity that fire elementals used to have to fire. Now, no doubt that's causing a lot of people to shout from the rooftops, "Oh, my immersion!" At which point I point out, 1, it's a video game. 2, it's magical fire. The same reason I can cast fire underwater is the same reason I can hurt fiery elementals with fire. It's magical fire. The water debate was, well, it wasn't much of a debate, it was more of a couple of people spurging out, which was interesting, to say the least. And it seemed to lack understanding of how fire actually works, and the reason that fire doesn't tend to exist underwater, and that's because it gets oxygen-starved very quickly. That and the fact that water tends to remove heat from the flame faster than the fire can actually produce it, ergo ending the combustion effect. But it's magical fire, for God's sake. It's like 1,000,000 freaking magic degrees. It doesn't matter. Yes, we can hurt the elementals with it, because it's magical. A wizard did it, ladies and gentlemen. See, I remember the times when, yes, a lot of things were immune to fire, and it sucked. It served no practical purpose whatsoever. Yeah, I'd like to have my spec limited by the fact that, arbitrarily, this mob just happens to be made of fire, and apparently my magic doesn't do anything to it. What does that add to the game? Nothing. It's just irritating. Serves no practical purpose. It doesn't make anything any more difficult. Alright, okay, I've just respec'd to Frost. Suddenly the difficulty has disappeared, and I'm using a spec I don't actually want to use because it's boring. Yay! And so forth. And for God's sake, I remember back in Vanilla with Frost Mages, the ultimate ability we had was Ice Barrier. That's really helpful in a PvE environment, I'm told. Wait, no, actually it really isn't. It's primarily a PvP ability. Yeah, it's nice to have a little bit of extra shield and damage absorption, but really, does that compare to the rest of them? No. No, it does not. Now, despite the fact that a lot of this dungeon appears complete, it's not quite finished. You'll notice that there is on the Water Lasher a placeholder marker. That means its model is not quite done yet. As far as I can tell, we do have some weird-looking ethereals in here as well, which doesn't make any sense. They really shouldn't be there. But again, most likely placeholder models. A lot of these Twilight Ascended, you saw it on MMO Champion, I showed you a model in the new models video I did a while ago. There's a lot of variations on that, and these guys are humanoid, but they are actually elementals. They have transcended the level of humanity, and they set themselves on fire, and they're sort of permanently burning, or water, or earth, or whatever the hell you please. The models for those are not quite done yet, and for instance, there's an air one that looks absolutely dreadful. It's just flat textures, but hey. Still, the dungeon is in a nice state. Now, you can't help but see blatant references here to LBRS and UBRS. I mean, just look below there. Tons and tons of mobs. They actually bothered to put them there. You don't need to go down there and kill them, of course. But they are there. They do exist. They've just put them in there to make it look like an actual living dungeon, as opposed to just something that you run through to get epics, which is nice, considering you don't actually get any epics in here. Not in normal mode, for obvious reasons. Now, can we avoid pulling the pack? Well, yes we can. Here's a new mob type for you. It's a worm caller. I'll give you 3 guesses what it does. Yes, there you go. Calls a worm. Those are nasty little bastards. I can tell you that for a fact. Big flame damage there. You want to try and drag them the hell away from there. Spread out if you can. Bring the worm caller down as quickly as possible and then kill that. So yeah, not too nice. They also leave patches of fire on the floor, which do hideous amounts of damage. You noticing how things are actually doing damage in here? And how they're actually dangerous? Compared to the Vortex Pinnacle, and to some degree the Stone Core? Isn't that nice to see? And up until this point, I thought the Throne of Tides was the best dungeon they'd done in Cataclysm thus far. I still think it's a very good dungeon. But in this case, I think Grim Batol is just better. In terms of the packs it's got, in terms of the challenge it puts towards you, in terms of the actual boss variety, and the amount of things that can very easily kill you in here. I think it's just a better designed instance overall. It's good. I just hope they can bring the Stone Core and the Vortex Pinnacle up to this kind of level and give it that level of challenge, the variety, and make sure that you are constantly having to be awake here. Now, as on the mob type right there, you might have noticed they summon Twisted Visages, quite a lot of them as well. It is a channeled spell, so you can interrupt it, although they will summon a few nonetheless. You can stop them from getting to a critical mass, which is quite nice. It's a massive number of them. Twisted Visages were also part of Icecrown Citadel, as I recall. Some of the mobs there will create them. I think it was in the center area, as you were going through the various wings, the Blood, the Plague, and the Frost. Nice to have that mechanic back. I did enjoy that quite a bit. Always nice to get a little bit of AoE in here. I mean, none of these packs per se, especially with the elites, are really AoE-able. It's nice to drop a Flame Strike every now and again, because that's applying some damage over time, and it doesn't tend to pull aggro, because it's a constant amount of damage, as opposed to some big, nasty piece of burst. That's good stuff, and it will get you a little bit extra DPS, and it will help the group, but AoEing things down, not going to happen. In terms of how much health these have, they vary between about 350,000 and 500,000. The Gron have more, and the Elementals that are summoned, as you might imagine, have less. Obviously, those Trogs aren't all that threatening in that regard either. But yeah, these guys take quite a bit of damage to bring down, no question about that. As far as I'm aware, we're kind of beyond the point where those bombers would have really done an awful lot for us since we've already beaten the second boss. It was really only the start where you got to do a lot of it. I don't know, I mean, the problem is a lot of this instance really looks the same, and a lot of the packs look quite similar, so it might be that we did fly around this far. Can't quite remember. Whatever the case, you're going to be clearing quite a lot of trash in this instance. There's been a lot of complaints in that regard. And I think those complaints aren't valid, honestly, because of that flying bombing run mechanic. Now, this guy is quite interesting. He's got some nice phrases that you might recognize. He does a number of things. There's a little bit of argument going on here with him as well. You see, Monsieur Shadowburner has a few friends. Some of them are polite, some not so much. His first one is the Invocation of Flame right here that will create an elemental that will lock onto somebody and will move towards them. You need to kill it before it explodes and does massive damage. It seems to either have threat or it will just randomly pick somebody near you and switch targets if you run away from it. If it blows up, it'll do massive amounts of damage to you. Not very pleasant at all. Especially not when comboed with this dude. Massive Great Twilight Dragon he decided to summon. It breathes, it fires nasty stuff all over the place. Yeah, it's just not good. You can see he's just throwing those nasty shadow bolts all over. Big Twilight Breath there as well, nothing you really want to get into, and also has this sort of gas attack, which will sit on the ground, and you don't want to be standing in that either. It's pretty damn hectic, honestly. Very nicely so indeed. Thankfully, he decides he doesn't want to stick around and die, so he just lets Shadowburner die instead, and buggers off to the Twilight Plane. He is phased, we cannot hurt him anymore, sadly. We hoped he would come back here, actually, and engage another phase, but no, maybe not. Maybe the heroic version, or maybe he'll pop up in some kind of raid dungeon later, as we saw in Wrath with Rime Fang, if you remember correctly. Still a bit of a tussle up there. You'll notice that all over the dungeon, honestly. It's a big fight between the Red Dragon Flight and the Twilights. Now, we've got quite a few more packs to deal with before we're able to go on to the final boss. You'll notice we have been in here for a very long time indeed. This was about an hour and a half's worth of raw footage, and we were in here for over 2 hours, so even sped up, this is pretty damn lengthy. Now, I was reading on the forums that some people were saying the reason this is so challenging is because there is a lack of level-appropriate gear for it. I don't think that's really the case, actually, and if you look at a lot of the gear we're wearing, I wouldn't call it level-appropriate per se, but it's certainly close enough. I mean, we're wearing quite a few blues from level 83 to 85 instances, and just think about it, this is a normal mode that you're expected to do as a fresh 85. You're not expected to have loads of level-appropriate gear by this point. The real problem is that Oldham and Twilight Highlands right now aren't dropping any quest rewards, which is not all that helpful. And of course you can't get anything from Vortex Pinnacle either, but you can get a massive amount of pretty damn nice gear from Deephole. I mean, we're talking about item level at least 300 up to about 313, and I believe in some areas a little bit more than that. So it's not crazy out there to suggest that this is close enough, especially for normal mode. Again, for heroic, okay, sure, you should be kitted out in full level 85 from dungeons and from the good quests, but for normal? No, I don't think so at all. Eventually, like all of these kind of dungeons, you're going to be able to outgear it, which is a tad disappointing, but we haven't seen the heroic mode yet. We don't know what additional mechanics are going to be thrown into the mix there. They could be very unpleasant indeed. I certainly hope that they are. And what I'd suggest to Blizzard is that you need a lot of you screw this up, you die mechanics. The reason is that those don't scale. It doesn't matter if you have better gear or whatever. If it kills you, then it kills you. It needs to be an amount of damage so high that it is going to kill you no matter what you do. Make it obvious, but make sure that you stay awake. And that's the way to do it as far as I'm concerned. Don't rely on damage that ends up trailing off or mechanics that can be avoided simply by having a DPS race. And I'm talking about, say, 3 Drakes or Obsidian Sanctum right here, whereby you can bypass almost everything about that fight that makes it challenging simply by overgearing it entirely. That could have been avoided with some more instant death mechanics. Okay, I'm going to clear these out of the way, and as you saw, there was a big General Vezak-style dude at the back there, one of those nasty Faceless One generals. He's got a couple of Faceless Ones in there as well, just chilling, and he can also summon some during the fight. Now, this is a fight that I wouldn't call it an instant death mechanic per se, but effectively it is, because if you get caught out, then, well, not even the Seagull's going to save you. Let's deal with these. These don't do an awful lot, really. They've got some kind of corruption attack that didn't really seem to do anything, a Siphon Essence, but hey, not a big deal. They're very easy to handle. What they do have is an Umbral Mending, which I assume is some big heal. They never managed to cast it, though. So maybe that needs to trigger a little bit earlier, or maybe we were just doing fat damage. With a level 83 in the group, though, I'm not entirely convinced of that, so maybe that needs a little bit of retuning, because since neither of these guys were able to cast it, the mechanic might as well not exist. It didn't do anything to us at all. You see it there. Doesn't manage to pull it off. Dies. And there you go. Those are the eggs of Alex Straszak. My god, those look painful. Ugh. No wonder she's so pissed off all the time. We've also got the Black Dragonflight, and as you're aware, they've been altering a number of different Dragonflights to make more Twilight Dragons. Now, this dude is unpleasant. It's not entirely the same model. They have altered it just a little bit. Now, he's got a very nasty root that does damage over time. You don't really want to stand there. You want to spread out for it. But here's the big deal. Shadow Gale. You get caught here, you're toast. And you really are. It's not an instant death mechanic, but it screws you over so much, and it stacks so unpleasantly. The only way to deal with that is to run right into the middle. We were talking on Vent, and some guy said, oh, well, you're supposed to stand in that, because obviously he'd heard a little bit about the fight. What he really meant was you have to stand right in the eye of the storm, because if you don't, this happens. You're very dead. And the Seagulls will not save you. Not even 2 Seagulls. Not even 2. Let's try it again, shall we, ladies and gents? Final boss right here. Okay, so we'll spread out. Well, we would spread out. It's like, after this, we realize, hey, you know what? Actually, sitting there in the big shadow thing, probably a very bad idea. I was able to, thankfully, absorb most of that on a ward. Shadow Gale, here we go, here we go. So now we're standing right in the center of the room. This, as far as I can tell, seems to always go in the center of the room. So if you hang around near it, you'll be fine. Then you can spread out if you so desire, or you can eat the shadows. Now, he'll bring in some ads right here. You've got to nuke these down pretty damn fast because they try and bring out some kind of dragonkin. We don't let that happen, needless to say. But if it did, I'd imagine it would make things very unpleasant for everybody concerned. I would think, honestly, they need to toughen those up quite a bit, because we didn't seem to have any difficulty DPSing them down. Alternatively, the other way to do it would be to make them channel that ability faster, so that you've got to DPS them down harder in order to stop the ads from coming in. That said, it's a pretty nice encounter, honestly, and I'm just so impressed with that dungeon. Really, I hope that it scales properly. It really does seem like a very entertaining 5-man normal, and the heroic mode should be even better. Very nice design. Looking forward to being able to do it with the bombing runs as well and not screwing things up. That's a very nice mechanic there. So yes, nice. Lots more nice. Let's throw some more nice in there. Great dungeon, Blizz. Awesome. Really entertaining. And I'll see you next time.